Hello and welcome to Staff Picks, the podcast for movie nerds by movie nerds. As always, I'm Mario Lanza and I am your host on our journey through the movies out there that just need a little more love. And our movie today, oh boy, is this a fun one. This is a movie I go way back with. This was probably, every kid has a favorite movie growing up. This was my favorite movie when I was a kid. So we're going way back to the late 70s here. We are talking about the Disney flop, I guess we'll say flop, the Disney science fiction flop, The Black Hole from 1979, which, again, I could not have more of a history with this movie, and I've been dying to do this episode for the longest time. So we're going to jump right into this one. This is going to be really fun. My guest for this one, speaking of things I go way back with, this is a guy I've been friends with on the internet for like 30 years, going back to fantasy baseball leagues we were playing back in the early 90s. So this is a guy I've known for literally 30 years on the internet, yet we've never spoken.
Never spoken.
Never, and there he is. So, yeah, I want to welcome him to the show. This is, again, I use this phrase a lot. This is one of those Gatekeeper meeting the Keymaster moments that probably is not responsible. But here we are meeting for the first time. Computer nerd, funny guy from Pittsburgh, Pete Butler. Welcome, Pete.
Thanks, Mario. It's great to be here.
So kind of give people a little history on how we know each other. I think you might be able to do it better than me.
Yeah, fantasy baseball. We have been in fantasy baseball leagues that each other has run. This was, mid to late 90s. I recall you ran the League of Champions, and I was the manager of the Iowa Corn Dogs for many years. Mm-hmm. Then I turned around and ran the League of Legends, where you had the Gaza Strip Peckers. And yeah, this was back in the day when it was labor intensive as hell. These were simulated leagues. And yeah, what did we use? Diamond Mind. That was the simulator we were both using. Or at least I was using it. I think you were using something else.
Yeah, I wasn't using Diamond Mind. At the start, I was using Micro League Baseball 2.
Okay. But yeah, oh my God, there were no tools for this.
Yeah, everything was typed in by hand. I ran the first league, Pete ran the second one, and you had the most ambitious league I've ever seen where you can draft any player in history from the baseball encyclopedia, and Pete had to type them in manually, which I have no idea why you even attempted that.
Because it seemed cool. And you know what? For 5 seasons it was. But then after 5 seasons, I did the thing where I met a woman and made some choices. And that woman is no longer in my life, so, I'm not confident I made the correct choice there, but, life goes on.
So what you're saying is you're planning to bring back the League of Legends from 1997.
Clearly that is the only sensible choice at this point.
Yeah, so do you remember where specifically we first met? This will take you way back.
ISCA,
yeah, for...
Yeah.
Children who grew up in the 90s, college students may know ISCA as the first major online message board for college students.
That one was interesting because you didn't have to dial into it directly. It was accessible from the nascent internet. Mm-hmm. I know there are a lot of BBSs out there in general, but you had to dial into them directly and then pay them directly, and I never got into that.
Yeah, same here. If it was free, I would do it. That was my rule.
Yeah.
So Pete and I met on a college message board back in 1993, which, if you're doing the math, is literally 30 years ago.
You might be going back a little too far, but I'm pegging it at 97, but still.
Really?
25 years, 30 years, yeah.
Okay, so how old are you? I thought you were about my age. I'm 49.
I'm 50, so. And I gotta say, our experience with the Black Hole is very, very similar. Because, yeah, when I was a kid, this was absolutely my favorite movie. Loved seeing it on HBO. When I remember we were doing the thing in school where you could, sign up for the Scholastic books, and yeah, I remember the novelization of The Black Hole was available. I was like, how are all of you not ordering the Black Hole book?
Did you have the Disney read-along book like I did?
I did not. I had the Alan Dean Foster novelization.
Okay, I'm picturing my younger listeners trying to picture what we're talking about. Let me try to frame this in context. So, Disney in the 70s was really having a hard time as a studio. They had done all their big animation movies, Snow White and stuff way back in the day, but by the 70s they were kind of a dying studio. They were just doing these live action lame movies with like Don Knotts and Jim Dale, which someday we'll talk about those. But in the late 70s, they came out with this movie, which was the first Disney PG movie, and it was maybe a little too advanced for little kids. Like,
oh my God, that is such a generous take on this movie. The key to this movie is that date, 1979. I mean, this script, I've done some background research on this movie, and it's such a fascinating train wreck. This script had been kicking around since the early 70s, but nobody wanted to make it until 1977 happened. All of a sudden, everyone wants to get in on some of that sweet, sweet Star Wars money. And that's how The Black Hole actually got filmed. Was because, they wanted to turn this into Disney's take on Star Wars.
Because as we all know, Disney will never have anything to do with Star Wars in the future.
Yeah, their eventual solution to the Star Wars problem, I give it, a lot of credit for its elegance, for its simple brute force elegance of just buy the damn thing. But no, at the time this was not really an option, and thank God.
Yeah, okay, so as Pete said, in 1979, Disney is trying to rip off Star Wars, which was not uncommon. A lot of the studios were trying to rip off Star Wars. There's a lot like Laser Blast. There's other stuff out there, too.
Oh, yeah.
But this is Disney's take on it. And I cannot get over, and I cannot overemphasize the fact how PG-rated this movie really is.
Oh, my God. Yeah, not just the first PG-rated Disney movie. I'm pretty sure this is the first Disney live-action Disney movie to feature a character getting eviscerated on screen. There's no actual blood. It's not like, this is not like horror movie, but it is very clear that Anthony Perkins is extremely dead, and that robot just literally tore him to pieces.
Yeah, okay. This is for people who have maybe never seen this movie. What Pete is saying is not an exaggeration whatsoever. A character takes a spinning blade to his heart, and his innards are torn out in a fucking Disney movie.
Yeah, you don't see it, but oh, the noise he makes.
And I should point out, I was 5 when I saw this movie.
Yeah, I would have been about 7 when this finally made it to HBO. I was probably 7 years old. And
yeah. So anyway, there's a really bad murder in this movie. There's a couple hells. There's a couple dams. This is not the typical Disney movie, especially of that era. Well, really, of any era.
But take a step back. When you said that there are a couple of hells initially, so you mean that they said the word hell a few times?
Oh yeah, that too. Yes.
Yeah, there is a hell. Not the word. We actually go to hell in this movie.
Yeah, this movie is all about life and death and hell and heaven and rebirth and reincarnation. And I literally wrote it down in my notes. This is by far the most existential movie I'd seen in my life when I was 5 years old.
Yeah. And it's hard to describe what a complete clusterfuck this movie is, because it went through so many incarnations, finally making it to screen, and I feel like they're all relevant for understanding just what the fuck happened here. Because the original idea for this movie, I have not read any of the original scripts for it. I'm sure I probably could if I dug hard enough. The internet has everything. But yeah, the first version of this movie was a disaster movie in space. The Towering Inferno, but in space. The Poseidon Adventure, but in space. And you can see that during the third act. It absolutely becomes that.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was also but then it kind of morphed into being also a haunted house movie in space, which you can also see very clearly. But then it gets filmed because we want that Star Wars money, so now it's a disaster movie slash haunted house slash Star Wars knockoff in space. But it's also because Disney is filming this fucker, it also has to be kid-friendly. So now we've got a disaster, haunted house, Star Wars knockoff, kiddie flick.
Now, okay, I do want to clarify one thing. Like, you said this is a movie as a cluster, and it is. This movie is a mess.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of a charming mess. And why I bring that up is because that's the whole premise of this podcast, movies that deserve more love. Like, this movie is a disaster. It's a flop. It was a huge, notorious flop. But there's something charming about it I still love to this day.
If you cherry pick this movie aggressively enough, you can come away convincing yourself it's a good movie. And there is sincerely a lot to like in here. I know we're going to, but we will absolutely be isolating elements of this movie that, despite all of this shit, actually work pretty well. But yeah, in aggregate, it is so much less than the sum of its parts.
I will say I showed it to my wife for the first time. She didn't grow up with this movie like I did. She had responsible parents. She was watching like Bambi and stuff, but I'm watching this. So I showed her this when, she's in her mid 40s, and she's like, "It's not very good." And I'm like, "I know that, but I still love it."
But yeah, I shared this when I just saw this movie on Friday in preparation for this, and I wound up watching the first 2/3 of it with my best friend, who is a 25-year-old woman, or 26-year-old woman, and she was just mystified by it, but loved a lot of it. She had a good time with this.
Okay, I have to give one really important anecdote. This is one of the most important anecdotes I've ever told on Staff Picks, and I suspect you will relate to this very hard.
Hit me.
So, when I'm 5 years old, I see this movie. And this is one of the first quote-unquote adult movies I ever saw. Up to then I'd seen like Pete's Dragon, I'd seen Fantasia, maybe Smokey and the Bandit, I'm not entirely sure. But I saw this movie, and this movie really disturbed me because it gave me nightmares. And I'm guessing you can guess which character did that. We'll get to him in a second.
Oh my. Yes, I can. I know exactly which character did that.
Okay. Yeah, I will specifically say, so I remember a conversation. I'm one of these guys who remembers every conversation I've ever had with someone. So my friend Ryan, we're like in kindergarten, 5 or 6 years old, somewhere in there. And we're talking about movies that are the scariest things we've ever seen. And it was common wisdom at my school that Darth Vader was the scariest thing people had ever seen. And then I suggested another name. I'm like, have you guys ever seen The Black Hole? I'm like, Maximilian is the scariest MF I have ever seen. I didn't use the word MF yet, but
Yeah.
but I said, Maximilian is so scary, he gives me nightmares. And I remember a hush falling over all my friends. Because, like, they agreed with me, but they didn't want to mention his name. Like, he's so much scarier than Darth Vader, they didn't even want to talk about him because they were all having nightmares, too.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was going to make that comparison as well. Maximilian is clearly their attempt to do Darth Vader, and it works mostly. I mean, but what's amazing is that it really just works for little kids. I think as an adult, I'm completely put off by all the schlock they put in surrounding that character to try and make him palatable to little kids.
Mm.
And I feel like all the stuff that was supposed to take the edge off that character utterly failed. And if you're a kid, he's just fucking terrifying.
Yeah, again, it's exactly like you said. They really try to Disney this character up, but he is a death robot. He literally exists for no reason but to kill people. And I had so many nightmares. Like, I literally had to sleep in my parents' bed because of this movie. And this is one of my earliest memories of childhood. This movie is so freaking scary to little kids. This one literally messed me up. And like, I'm not joking about that either.
No, and I feel like that's one of the things that we're talking about when we're saying that for all its flaws, this movie really has some things that work in it, which is insane. This is this ill-conceived disaster Star Wars ripoff haunted house kitty schlock in space that is trying to out-scary Darth Vader and pulls it off. What the actual fuck?
Yeah, it's funny because I have mentioned Maximilian over the years. I write about the black hole all the time on the internet, and I always mention Maximilian. And anybody who grew up with this movie knows instantly what I'm talking about. They're like, oh yeah, I had problems with Maximilian.
Yeah, I will say this. If anybody's listening to this who, like us, remembers this movie from your childhood and remembers how goddamn terrifying Maximilian was, leave that memory pure.
Oh, because it doesn't hold up?
Yeah. He is so... all the schlocky stuff that they stick onto that character really stands out as an adult. And it is, as an adult, Maximilian's a lot more frustrating because suddenly it becomes, okay, they were going for Darth Vader, and now, because I'm old, they missed, but they shouldn't have. They almost nailed it. But, like, yeah, if you're a kid, bang fucking on.
Okay, and I think I'll point out one thing that you'd probably agree with. One other thing that works in this movie, even though overall I think Pete and I will both agree this movie doesn't work, but there are some amazing things. And one thing I got to point out is the cast in this movie.
Oh my God, it's loaded.
It really is, and I had no concept of that as a kid.
Yeah, me neither. I certainly couldn't appreciate it, and this is something that I do appreciate more as an adult watching this movie. I mean, the script to this fucking thing is terrible, but the actors are really trying to sell it. Mm-hmm. And there's so much nonverbal stuff going on screen a lot of the time. They are working so hard to find, some character and humanity in what they're doing. And yeah, Robert Forster is completely... This movie is not worthy of what Robert Forster's doing on screen.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So back in the late 90s, Quentin Tarantino famously said, there's this great actor who used to do all this great work, and he's not doing anything anymore. I'll bring him back and give him a comeback. That's Robert Forster in Jackie Brown.
One of my all-time favorite tough guy characters. Yeah, love Jackie. Yeah.
But Forster, I've never seen a movie where Robert Forster is bad in. And again, this is one of the, iconic Robert Forster roles. I would say, like, if you love this guy, you should see this movie at least once to see him try to rescue this schlock.
Yeah. And, it is so easy to imagine the worst version of all these characters because, there's not a lot on the page to Captain Dan Holland. He's just, the lantern-jawed, upright space captain. But Forster is really bringing some humanity to that part. I mean, and I really want to know, was the romance between Captain Dan and Dr. Kate, was that in the script, or was that Robert Forster and Yvette Mimieux just going, look, we got jack shit to work with. Are we into each other? Some of this makes more sense if we're into each other. Do we want to go there?
Okay, we'll talk about that. That's at the very end of the movie. Yeah, I was wondering that as well.
Oh, I think it is sprinkled in throughout. It is most clear at the end of the movie that, yeah, the consummation of this romance is the two of them holding hands.
Well, it's a Disney movie.
Works.
Yeah, it's a Disney movie.
Yeah.
They can't be like banging each other.
Yeah, but it works. It belongs in a much better movie than this.
Okay, so we have Robert Forster. I love this guy. Just a legendary tough guy actor. We have Yvette Mimieux. Is that how you say her last name?
That's what I'm guessing.
Okay. That's what I was going to guess too, so that's good. We have her as the Dr. Kate, the ESP scientist. And then just as side characters, why not? We have Oscar winner Ernest Borgnine.
Yes.
And then why not? What the hell? Let's throw in Norman Bates himself, Anthony Perkins, as the science officer.
And then how big a name was Maximilian Schell? I feel like he felt like a big actor. I don't know if he didn't have any parts. It felt like it was probably at the tail end of a career.
I don't know. He just felt like someone who should have been a Bond villain.
Yeah. And I suspect that he had a larger career in not English speaking movies. But yeah, dude was in full mad science mode. If you want an iconic mad science character, Maximilian Schell as Dr. Hans Reinhardt really just goes all in.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, for as bad as this movie is reputed to be, and for as big a flop as it was, we've already named like 4 things that are really good about it.
Yeah, that's why this movie is fascinating and worth talking about. It's, most bad movies are bad because they're boring, because they're predictable, they're not making any interesting choices, everybody's clearly half-assing it. And this one, to be fair, this one has some really boring stretches. We'll get to that, I'm sure, but it's making so many choices. A lot of them are very wrong choices.
Mm-hmm.
But I respect how it's trying to do a thing, and everybody who's in front of the camera is trying to legitimately bring something to it. Nobody's half-assing this thing. I mean, one of the lesser known names on that cast, Joseph Bottoms, who played Lieutenant Charlie, he was going for it, man. In his mind, this was his chance to be Han Solo. And it comes through, and it doesn't, work perfectly, but you can't accuse the guy of phoning it in.
No. Okay, before we delve into the plot of this movie and get into some of the more existentialist questions raised by this Disney movie for 5-year-olds.
We're going to hell.
Yeah, we're going to hell. We're going to hell.
We're going to hell.
Yeah, so I should point out a fun trivia fact. Neil deGrasse Tyson once called this the least scientifically accurate movie of all time. Fun fact.
Yeah, I am not going to disagree with him.
Yeah, just to clarify that for people, this movie involves people flying into a black hole just to see what will happen.
Yeah.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson, not a fan of their conclusions.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's not a fan of anything leading up to that either.
I'll have to see if he wrote any reviews of the full movie.
That's another aspect of this movie that really struck me on the most recent watch of it, is that there's something childlike about its construction, in that it's like it's shaped like a serious and thoughtful movie. What everybody is saying is stupid gibberish, but the way they're saying it and the way it's being framed, this is clearly a movie that is shaped like something that is very, very thoughtful and, very scientifically grounded. And boy, is it not.
I think this is where we go into the George Costanza logic, that it's not a lie if you believe it.
There's a moment in this movie where Maximilian Schell is just muttering letters and numbers and equations under his breath. What do they mean? I doubt they mean a goddamn thing. He just, G equals R squared. And
I actually noticed that. I wrote it down in my notes. He's doing his math test there. All right, so did you read the fun trivia fact? The person who was almost cast in this movie and would have made it even more iconic?
Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, so for the lead female scientist in this movie was almost played by Sigourney Weaver.
We do not need to specify which female character it was. There was one.
One, okay.
The female character was almost Sigourney Weaver. Yeah.
Yeah, in 1979, and the producers wanted her, or the director wanted her for this movie, and Disney vetoed her because she's got an unattractive name and she's unmarketable.
Wow. If this freed up time for her to do Alien, everybody won.
Yeah, that's the thing. That is literally what happened. She was allowed to do Alien because they turned her down for this one. But man, that changes a lot of film history if she gets this movie instead.
Yeah, and I forget the name of the other actress, but Yvette Mimieux was actually the third choice. They cast another woman in that role, and they wanted to they insisted that the female character have her hair cut short, and this particular actress really loved her long hair, so she needed to get wine drunk in order to go get her hair done for this. And then she got into a damn car accident because she was wine drunk getting her hair cut.
Wow. And that's only like the 5th biggest fail in this movie. Okay, so we're going to go into The Black Hole, which, to clarify for people, is not a porn movie. Just clarifying that right now. This is a Disney movie, the first PG Disney movie ever. Huge deal. This cannot be overstated what a big deal this movie was at the time. And it just has been so forgotten. And isn't that sad?
Yeah. And Disney went all in on this sucker. I mean, I remember them pushing this hard. Mm-hmm. Like, there were moments in that film that they thought were iconic, like the giant meteor coming down the hallway towards the bridge. I mean, I saw that a lot on TV and stuff. And, like going to Disney World and you can get your picture of you as one of the people on the bridge trying to get across before the meteor destroys you.
Wow, I could be Charlie.
Yeah!
Wow, every kid's fantasy and dream. Yeah, so this movie, just a huge deal for its time, and that's the one thing we want to get across. What a big deal this movie is for people of that era, for that era in itself. In fact, it's funny, the movie I kept thinking of when I was watching this morning and taking notes was, God, this reminds me of Moonraker.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah, Moonraker feels like the more cohesive movie. James Bond in space feels vastly more cohesive than this. But I see the comparison, absolutely.
Well, yeah, a lot of the shots are the same. A lot of the plot, especially in the third part, is the same. A lot of the music feels like a Bond movie. I'm like, boy, this 1979, I guess that was the year of these big space flops. Okay, so I think, are you ready to try to walk through this movie the best that we can?
Are we going to start with a 3 minutes of darkness?
Okay, you may have to explain. That's kind of an inside joke, but you can explain to people what that means. Yeah, this movie starts very interestingly. In fact, it's kind of a throwback to the way movies used to be made. So explain how The Black Hole begins.
Oh, I don't recall seeing this when it aired on HBO. I think HBO had the good sense to edit this out. But if anybody listening to this decides they want to see this thing, they're probably going to see it on Disney Plus, and they will get the full experience, which means 3 minutes or so of pure black screen while the overture plays in the background. It looks like it was supposed to have a Star Wars style crawl text going, but they never got around to it, but somehow still decided to leave that music in.
Okay, see, I have the DVD, and on the DVD, it's not a plain black screen. It just says The Black Hole Overture. There's red letters over the front of it.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah, that's a nice feature.
Yeah, I'm sure people got very confused about what the hell was going on. But yeah, and then we get our first, we get, after 3 minutes of literal nothing but darkness, my friend was like, so are we in the black hole right now? Is this what it's like to be in a black hole? So we get to the end of this music, and then the movie proper kicks in, and we get our first taste of how disjointed this is going to be when we abruptly switch from this jaunty, military adventure tune to the creepy actual theme of the black hole, mm-hmm. which they overplay that hand, but it is legitimately a good, creepy orchestral piece of music. Those fucking violins have lived rent-free in my head for the past 40-some years.
All right, I will try to play a little clip of it here in the episode if I can find it on YouTube for free. But yeah, so the music is really fascinating in this movie. The thing with the blackness at the start, I'm not sure if you know the history behind that. I didn't either. I had to read this and look it up.
Oh, hit me.
Yeah, so back in the day with these big epic movies, it was common to have what was called the overture before the movie started, where you hear like the grand theme of the movie. And it was very common in big budget movies back in the day to play the overture before the movie starts. And I believe this movie and then Star Trek, the motion picture, were the last two movies in history to do that.
Wow, I did not realize that was a common thing.
Yeah, I didn't either. I have no recollection of seeing that in the theater, but apparently that overture was there in the theater, then they cut it out on VHS and DVD for many years, and then for Disney Plus and the latest DVD they restored it. But yeah, it's just an odd throwback to a way of starting a movie.
Yeah, no, I certainly, I don't recall seeing that in any movie I was in the theater when I was 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't in the Muppet movie, I can tell you that.
Well, because when you want to go out with a tradition like that, you want to go out with a bang. So make sure it's two good movies like The Black Hole and Star Trek the Motion Picture. Too bad they couldn't throw it in there to Ishtar as well, just to go for the trilogy. Okay, yeah, so we start with the black hole's ominous music, which I think is really good. I actually really love the scary, creepy music in this movie.
Yeah. I think they go to that, for that first song, they go to that well a little too often, but it is legitimately good. And once they start playing other pieces of music that are in that same kind of creepy vein, they tend to work very well also. So yeah, that's another thing we can point to of, yeah, that actually works.
Yeah, for a movie that makes no sense, is not scientifically accurate, and nobody really enjoys, the music is really good.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you had to isolate which of this movie's many disparate sources actually works the best, it has to be the haunted house in space.
Yeah, that part does succeed. I think the middle part of this movie is really good.
Yeah. There are stretches where you start liking this movie, and not in an ironic way, not in a train wreck way. This movie actually is solid in several lengthy stretches, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so we are introduced at the start of the movie to our stars. There's a spaceship in the year 2130 called the USS Palomino. And what is their mission? They're just searching around for intelligent life, or
they're looking for intelligent life. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Or planets. I believe also planets that could be used for future living conditions.
They're searching for, and I quote, habitable life.
Okay, so hopefully Neil deGrasse Tyson didn't have a problem with that term. Hopefully that worked. Okay, so let's talk about the crew. There's 5 stars in this movie, and then they have a robot, Vincent, who could not be more of an R2-D2 ripoff, but he is pretty cute. Are you a Vincent fan?
Oh, man. I was a Vincent fan when I was a kid, but I have some problems with Vincent now. And I think it's more accurate to say he is an R2-D2 C3PO mashup.
Ah.
He's still very fussy and very British. He is voiced by Roddy McDowall, who is uncredited.
Okay, we'll get to your beef with Vincent, because I am very curious to hear your rant against why you don't like Vincent, the adorable little robot.
Oh, man. Vincent has a dark side, man.
Okay, we'll get there. So the crew, the USS Palomino, we have the captain, Dan Holland, played by Robert Forster, who I will just call Robert Forster for the rest of this movie because I always forget his name is Dan.
Yeah.
Then we have First Officer Charlie Pizer, played by Joseph Bottoms. I just call him the young guy.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the ESP scientist, Dr. Kate McRae, Yvette Mimieux, who has the ability to ESP connect with a robot, which is fun.
And that's it. That is the extent of her psychic powers. She can do ESP with one particular robot. She can use her brain to talk to Vincent and Vincent only, and that's it.
So if there were like a Super Friends of all these ESP scientists in the world, she's Aquaman.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have a journalist on board, Harry Booth. This is Ernest Borgnine, who you may know as a large, rather greasy fellow. And then we have a civilian, Dr. Alex Durant. This is Anthony Perkins from Psycho, who is this huge science nerd. And he's going to be very important to this plot later because he's going to be the one who really buys into this mad scientist ideas.
We're about to go into the opening scene with these guys, and man, the way this movie starts, it is rough. This dialogue, it is so functional and so expository and so nonsensical. I'm sure that Neil deGrasse Tyson had a small brain bleed during the opening scene where they're just spouting exposition and nonsense technobabble back and forth.
Yeah, just space jargon, space jargon, space jargon. That's literally the first 5 minutes of this movie.
But here's the thing. Interspersed amongst the face jargon is wire foo zero gravity. And it's not badly done at all.
Yeah, as a kid, I love that. The guys are just floating, and it's really well done.
Yeah, and why? But yeah, why is all this movie just kiddie schlock, and all of a sudden there's this weird hard SF thing going on? Well, they don't have artificial gravity. Of course not. They're just floating around in this ship. And it looks so much better than it has any right to. It's not, the best zero-G special effects you've ever seen, but it's so much better than this movie needs.
Well, yeah, and I think this is where we come back to the fact that this is a Disney movie. So Disney, even though this movie sucks, Disney was very competent at what they did. So the wire foo is really well done in this movie.
Yeah, and this is something we haven't touched on yet, and we're about to. But the parts of this movie that look good look amazing. Mm-hmm. Holy shit, some of the visuals in this fucker.
Yeah, you mentioned the meteor rolling down the hallway earlier. I love that shot. I think that's such a cool shot. I can see why Disney was really pushing that as a big iconic moment.
Yeah. It is absolute nonsense in context, but it looks so good.
Going back to the wire foo for a second, I specifically was watching on my latest rewatch. I've seen this movie hundreds of times, probably over my life. But I was watching it today just looking for any sign of a wire where I could catch the wire foo, where you could catch them in a bad effect. I only spotted one. That is unbelievable. I'm specifically looking for it. It's a shot of old Bob going down a hallway. You can see the wire. That's literally the only time in the movie you catch it.
Yeah, and that's worth pointing out, is that there's a lot of zero-G effects in this movie, or sort of flying effects. I mean, the zero-G stuff, this is not a one throwaway scene. This goes on for a little while. And even throughout the rest of the movie, 3 robots are floating the entire time, including Maximilian, who we've been talking about.
Yeah, that guy must have been heavy. I don't know how heavy that wire was that's floating him around.
Oh, man, I can only imagine. But yeah, the floating effects looked fine. They were working.
Yeah, that is not a detriment of this movie. That's one of the good things.
The floating robots look better than the stuntmen in robot suits.
Yeah, we'll get to them, the worst shooting robots ever.
Oh, those poor bastards. Oh.
Okay, let's not get too far ahead. So we have our 5 crew members. Again, this is a very simple plot, so we're expounding on some of these ideas. But so the 5 crew members have a side character, Vincent, who we talked about earlier. He's a little robot. He's got these huge, cute eyes. He exists for no other reason except to be adorable and profound.
Oh, I'm going to have to call you on that.
Hold on. Give me a second. Before you come in with the double barrel hammers there action, I will say Vincent stands for Vital Information Necessary Centralized, which that's the greatest trivia question ever. No one on earth will ever get.
That is so torture.
I know. And now that I've set up Vincent as the adorable comic relief, please, Pete, feel free to shred the shit out of this guy.
Oh, I'm not shredding his ass until Bob enters the picture. What I want to object to is the notion that Vincent is only there to be adorable.
Okay.
Vincent does a lot of heavy lifting in this thing.
You mean dialogue-wise?
No, I mean action-wise. I mean most of them die without Vincent to pull them through the final third of this movie.
I think if I should also point out that Vincent's the one who first starts shit on the ship by shooting the robot, so he's the one that really causes all the drama. But yeah, Vincent is very necessary. He does a lot. I kind of didn't remember that. As a kid, I just remember him floating around and being cute. But yeah, he really does. He has to rescue their butts on like 5 different occasions.
Yeah, yeah. No, my beef with Vincent is not due to his role within the plot. He is pulling his weight and then some.
Okay. All right. We'll save the rant against Vincent for later. But Vincent,
Yes.
for most people at the time who would have watched this movie as a kid, this is what you would have remembered: the special effects, Maximilian, and Vincent. Vincent was the one that was supposed to sell all the action figures. He was the one that kids were supposed to like.
Yeah, yeah. And I frankly think he hit what he was aiming for. I mean, I think, yeah, if you were a kid, I think Vincent was your damn hero coming out of this.
Yeah. And I will say, when I showed it to my wife the other day and she didn't like the movie, I said, well, what did you like? She's like, I like Vincent. So I guess it still works.
Yeah. My friend Olivia was like, oh, I love this good boy.
They should make Vincent into a battle bot. Wouldn't he be awesome?
Oh, my God. Let Will Dale swat him out of the air with a rake.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's get into the plot of the movie since we're an hour into the podcast and we haven't really even started. So
yeah, we're barely into the first scene.
this is what happens. Okay. So the plot of the movie is they're floating. The Palomino's floating through space, and as they're floating, they see this enormous black hole, which is, I guess, would be a good effect for 79. It doesn't look especially good now because it's kind of a matte painting, would you say?
The black hole itself? No, that was animated. Well, it was not animated, but it was moving. That was not a static image.
Okay, I mean it's kind of green screened. That's what I'm saying is you can tell it's a little fake looking, but the animation part's cool.
Yeah, no, yeah. It doesn't look anything like a black hole, but shut up, it's Disney sci-fi. It looks cool as hell. And very blue at this stage in the movie. It's a blue black hole.
Yeah, so they see this black hole and they all kind of crowd around their monitor to look at it. And there's a couple quotes here. Oh my God, that's the most destructive force in the universe. And we learn all this stuff like not even light can escape it. Nothing can escape that thing. And yes, and then Ernest Borgnine says, right out of Dante's Inferno. So
boy, does that pay off.
Yeah, later, when this movie literally goes to hell, that actually will call back. And I think one of them says, some scientists predict that one day black holes will devour the entire universe.
Yes.
And I think there's one more quote here. When I look at one of those, I expect to see the devil inside it. Again, Disney movie for 5-year-olds.
Hey, 5-year-olds got to learn foreshadowing somehow, all right?
Okay, and here's the plot of the movie. As they're looking at the black hole, they notice a spaceship parked right next to it. They're like,
yep.
What the hell is that? So kind of explain the Cygnus, what they see and what they think it is.
Yeah, it takes them a hot minute to identify the Cygnus as we go through some great 1979 computer graphics as they compare it to all the ships it could be. And yeah, the Cygnus is this gigantic ship that was originally trying to do the job the Palomino is currently doing, but bigger. Its role was also to go out and find, quote, habitable life somewhere in the universe. And we have even a personal connection with it, where Dr. Kate's father was on that ship. And it was recalled home, and then Earth lost contact with it. It never returned home. So they see this lost ship just hanging out, just chilling near a black hole, completely unaffected by what we have established is cataclysmic danger.
Yeah, so to put a visual in your head, if you've never seen this movie, so our good guys, the Palomino, they're like in a TIE fighter. They're a very small ship. And the Cygnus is like a Star Destroyer. It's way bigger than their little Palomino ship. So
I would say it's like if a Star Destroyer fucked a cathedral.
Wow.
And the exterior shots of this ship, we're very soon going to start getting some close-up exterior shots, and the Cygnus looks goddamn amazing.
Yeah, this is really cool. This is one of those shots. Again, why, even though this movie was a flop, it's still talked about fondly today by a lot of people. Kind of, it's a cult classic. But yeah, the Cygnus is unbelievable. It's an unbelievable piece of art design. I just love the look of this ship.
Oh, yeah. Just gorgeous. And yeah, like we were saying, the haunted house in space part of this movie is what looks best, and Cygnus sells the shit out of that vibe.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the Cygnus. So the Cygnus was the first ship that was sent out 20 years ago to search for inhabitable life or inhabitable planets. And they had a very famous captain, and this is where we learn about him. His name was Dr. Hans Reinhardt. And they all apparently know this guy. This guy was a legend, and I'll just summarize this real quick. He was like an eccentric, mad genius scientist who claimed that he was like understood science better than anybody else in the world, but his mission was a flop, so they recalled him, and like Pete said, the ship never came back. So the Palomino's like, oh, that's Hans Reinhardt's ship. That was like, and they're all talking about this news story from 20 years ago that this dude never came back.
Yeah, and Ernest Borgnine's character actually met him in person, we find out. Not that it really matters, but yeah, everybody knows who this dude is.
He's basically like Elon Musk, basically.
Oh God, now that's not an image that's going to leave my head ever.
Hey, you're the one that brought up the Star Destroyer fucking a cathedral. Let he who cast the first stone here.
Yeah, payback. Okay.
Just picturing Neil deGrasse Tyson writing a furious letter. Dear Disney, how dare you show a movie with a Star Destroyer fucking a cathedral? Not scientifically accurate. I say good day, sir. Okay, so they see the Cygnus floating out in space. They're like, oh, that's what happened to it. But again, like Pete said, they don't understand how it can sit right next to a black hole and not be sucked into it. So they're like, something weird is on that ship, and they decide just to pass a little closer to see what's going on, right?
Yeah, everybody wants to go have a look because this is so crazy and improbable what they're seeing. Robert Forster wants nothing to do with this bullshit, but everybody else on the ship wants to buzz the Cygnus and see if they can learn what happened to it. So he's like, okay.
And to be fair, Kate's dad was on the ship, so there is a little bit of sentimentality here.
Yeah, and oh man, now I want to go back and see if that's what sways him. Like I said, I think the hints of romance between him and Dr. Kate, I think there's little bits scattered throughout. Now I want to know, is that what swayed him? That Dr. Kate wanted to see if her dad was okay.
So now you're going to watch this again later tonight.
Yeah, probably.
Pete's got nothing else going on tonight. Black hole twice in 1 week. Okay, so they decide they can buzz the Cygnus one time, go fly by it and see what's going on. There's no lights on this ship. There's no signs of life. It's just this big, dead, hulking ship. Yeah. And so they start flying close to see what's happened. And it's funny because the minute they get close, all of a sudden, all the black hole gravity that's sucking things in stops. They're like, what happened?
Yeah. The ship, the black gravity causes turbulence in this movie, and the Palomino is just shaking like crazy as they get closer and closer to this, which, that's as good a way to represent the danger as anyway. Don't want to pick on that. There's so many other things to pick on. That's fine. But yeah, as all of a sudden, they're fine. The gravity is no longer fucking with them.
Yeah, they somehow figure out that something from this ship is sending out a zero gravity signal. So whenever they're near the ship, there's no forces from the black hole, pulling them into it. So, which I'm sure Neil deGrasse Tyson loved. Oh yeah, I'm sure it's very easy to override a black hole.
Yeah. But while they're, basking in those wonderful visuals that we were just talking about, they're very impressed by it as well. They stray a little too close to the black hole again, and now there's real trouble.
Yeah, this is a scene I'm going to yada through just because I hate explaining action scenes.
Yeah.
A good 10 or 15 minute scene here of them trying to get sucked into the black hole, and their ship gets damaged, and Vincent has to go outside and save their ship. So for the first time in the movie, Vincent will save their butts.
Yeah. And this is where we first learn that Dr. Kate and Vincent can communicate telepathically. Because why not just use a radio? Just use Wi-Fi, for fuck's sake.
It's the future, Pete. In the future, humans can communicate with robots telepathically. Man,
if she was their attempt to have a Jedi equivalent, I feel bad for their lack of ambition. But anyway.
Okay, yeah, so they all survive this big turbulence at the start, and they end up next to the Cygnus again.
That all of a sudden lights the hell up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, here comes one of the shots in this movie that legitimately gives me chills. It's so cool and so well done. When they're flying over this big hulk of a ship, and all of a sudden every light turns on inside the ship all at once, and it's kind of stunning when you first see it.
Yeah. I got nothing to add. That it is a great shot. Yeah.
It's really cool. Yeah, one of them says, "Wow, like a tree on Christmas morning."
Yeah.
And so now they're wondering, is there actually life in that ship? Like, that ship's been out here for 20 years. How could there be any life in it? And they kind of are looking through the panels, and they kind of see, like, if I remember some silhouettes walking around, they're like, oh my God, there's life on that ship. And I think this is where they don't necessarily want to dock on the ship, but they kind of have to because their ship is damaged. They're like, well, if there's life, we might as well land and dock there and get some spare parts. So they kind of have to.
Yeah, yeah. And at this point, this is when their motivation goes beyond idle curiosity of what's going on with this ship. Now they have an actual need that they need to get sorted out.
And thus is really where the movie begins. The movie has to get them onto the Cygnus.
Mm-hmm.
So they dock, and it's really creepy. Like, they just go to a docking bay and they walk inside. There's nobody in there. They're like, what is going on with the ship? And I think at one point someone says, maybe they're hostile. And I think Anthony Perkins says, no, if they were hostile, they would have blasted us. They're way bigger than us. So right off the bat, they don't think the ship is hostile, but they're very wary.
Yeah, yeah. And they're coming out with guns drawn, which... This is something I want to point out. We're going to see a lot of this. The weird militarization of all ships in this fucking movie. And we are going to see so much militarization on the Cygnus that makes no goddamn sense whatsoever, except because they needed a stormtrooper equivalent. They're ripping off Star Wars. They need stormtroopers.
So you're saying there's no reason for a ship who's been by itself for 20 years to have a huge defense system against attackers?
An enormous army of robots? No. Completely unnecessary, surplus to requirements. Do not need. I mean, the sidearms that the Palomino crew pull out, those, okay, I will grant those. Those seem sensible.
Okay.
But, oh my God, yeah. And apparently the Cygnus is just armed to the teeth. I mean, this is not a shooty pew-pew space battle kind of movie. There's no equivalent to the Death Star run in this thing. But apparently, yeah, the Cygnus is just loaded for bear.
Yeah. Okay, and I have to go back to 5-year-old me watching this movie. Like, I love the stormtroopers and their blaster rifles. But if you had asked me in 1979 what was cooler, I would have said the red robots from the black hole and their little double lasers. Like, a 5-year-old kid loves double pistols. So explain a double pistol to people, what those are.
Yeah, so this is twice as cool as a regular laser pistol because you've got twice the laser. You've got a barrel going over the top of your hand and a barrel going underneath your hand. And all the robots that we're going to meet in the not-so-distant future, they're all carrying 2 of these things. So, they are 4 times as cool as a stormtrooper by virtue of having 4 times the laser. So, yeah, I think your young self was absolutely right.
Yeah. I do not dispute my 5-year-old opinions on stuff like that. I think these are the worst shooting robots ever. They will never hit anything this entire movie, except one of them will accidentally hit old Bob later. That's it.
Yes.
That's the only time. But their guns are so cool. I love the guns in this movie, and I wish I could get like a little replica one of those.
I'm with you. The guns are great. We have some sensible-looking sidearms coming from the Palomino crew, but they are eliminated quickly because this as soon as they get into the antechamber, this automated laser system blasts the guns out of their hands with absolutely surgical precision and neutralizes both of the lasers that Vincent is packing.
Mm-hmm. It's the only direct hit the ship will ever have on anybody.
Yeah, we will never see this precise defense system utilized again.
But yeah, that's the whole point of this ship, is that this guy, Dr. Hans Reinhardt, has designed it to neutralize any aggressive threats. So if you walk onto his ship with guns, they get blasted out of your hand.
Yeah.
So his ship isn't necessarily hostile. He will just remove your ability to be hostile. That's the thing.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 4 people on the ship. They leave the young guy, Charlie back on the ship, and they all kind of traverse it. And this is a good long stretch of the movie. They kind of explore, like they're walking around and there's...
Explore is a very strong word. They go where they are told. They go to whichever door has been opened for them. And at one point there's a little sci-fi sled that's waiting for them that goes through the transit tubes going down either side of the Cygnus.
Yes. We turn into Logan's Run here for a little bit. We have a futuristic city with the transports. But yeah, so they are transported up to the command center of the ship where they're going to meet eventually Hans Reinhardt. They don't know that yet. They just think it's a robot ship being run by robots. So yeah, this is a long stretch of the movie. Again, I always forget when I watch this how long it takes this movie to get to people meeting each other. So let's yada yada over this a little bit. So it's kind of ominous. They're in a haunted house, abandoned ship. Vincent... I swear every 2 minutes Vincent's got some little parable to say or some catchphrase.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is not the thing that I find troubling about Vincent, but that is something that jumps out at me is he is so condescending. He is just this bottomless font of aphorisms and sayings that are vaguely kind of appropriate to whatever situation that he happens to be in. Yeah, I think they were trying to make him quippy, and that did not work.
I tried to write down every quip he says in this movie, but my wrist started to hurt. I'm like, I don't have that wrist tensile strength to do that. Yeah, so Vincent the robot's like, I don't like it when somebody else pulls the strings, Captain. And then, out of the frying pan into the fire, Captain. Yeah. And then later they get invited to the dinner, and he's like, invited to dinner, said the spider to the fly.
Yep.
Like, shut up, Vincent.
And just bat your big googly eyes, okay? Shut up and look pretty. That's what you're good at, buddy.
Yeah, that's what the action figure's for. We're not going to have a pull string. You don't need to be like Woody saying, there's a snake in my boot. We don't need that. So they get up to the command center. And it's just this is a really impressive set. I love this set in the movie, the big bridge of the command center. It's just computers and lights and buttons and to quote William Shatner in Airplane 2, lights and switches and knobs. And...
Oh, yeah. You one look and you know any science going on here is going to be mad science.
That's right. Lots of monitors, computer monitors and lights, and it's all robots, and you just see robots piloting the whole thing.
But creepy robots in robes with reflective faceplates.
Yeah, they look like Dementors.
Yeah. There are two very distinct large groups of robots. We've got the Dementor robots, and then we're about to meet the Stormtrooper robots. They are very different.
Those are the guys in red, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, those are the guys in red. The red, I compared them to Stormtroopers earlier. There's the red Stormtrooper robots, and then there's Dementor-looking science robots that run the ship. Those are the two types.
Oh, and we're glossing over something. You know who they meet first.
Yeah, I was just about to get to that. I was going to set you up for that. We are about to meet the big bad villain, the star of every nightmare in my life from the ages of about 5 through 8. We are about to meet Maximilian the Devil Robot.
Yes.
I only wish I could do justice and describe this robot to people who have never seen him. How would you describe Maximilian to people?
Humanoid in an uncanny valley kind of way. There are definitely arms, roughly where you would expect a person's arms to be. There are what are kind of legs, about where legs should be, but they're all wrong, and there are too many arms. He is all red. He has kind of a bucket helmet thing going for a head with a very angry-looking eye slot that glows red, and he floats. He floats menacingly. And I don't mean that as a joke. If you don't think something can float menacingly, Maximilian will prove you wrong.
Yeah, somehow they pulled out the greatest puppeteers ever because they made him have a menacing float.
Yeah. And he floats menacingly down from the ceiling towards them.
And I should add, he's about 7 feet tall. Mm-hmm. Just a big death robot. And to quote Dr. Sam Loomis from Halloween, he's got the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. This big, angry red, angry eye slit in the front. I cannot overemphasize enough how much that bothered me as a kid. This creepy killer devil robot.
Yeah. like we were saying in the early going, they were shooting for Darth Vader, and they hit.
Yeah. I would say they overshot Darth Vader. I'd say Darth Vader's shooting for Maximilian at a certain point.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Oh, man.
Yeah, so Maximilian comes down. He is the greeting committee on this ship. He is the lead robot. He is the right-hand man of Dr. Hans Reinhardt, and he exists for no reason other than to bully you and murder you.
Yes.
And the first time we see him, he's got these little blades in front. And again, I just get flash right back to 1979 and me terrorized under my covers thinking about this. He's got these little like propellers that he extends from his arms, and he starts coming at you because he wants to drill right the fuck through you.
Yeah. And I feel like the Palomino crew undersell this threat. I would have been shitting myself in that situation. Like, okay, why does the giant murder machine want to cut me?
I should point out, so Vincent is the only one who reacts. If we see Vincent, he like blows his top, his like hat comes off, and his eyes get real wide because he's this robot.
Oh God, yes. Why is his head blowable? It is, yeah. This is part of the kitty schlock aspect of this movie. Like in moments of extreme emotion, the top of Vincent's head lifts about 6 inches.
Yes.
It is the most stupid and ridiculous goddamn thing.
It was a feature. The future scientists knew they would need that feature on him one day. Like, what if he gets scared? We have to have him blow his top. So Maximilian comes at them with these spinny blades, and like you're right, the crew of the Palomino very undersells it. Like, this would be fairly terrifying if a robot twice your size comes at you with spinny blades, and they don't seem all that bothered by it.
Yeah. I wanted more of a reaction, but eventually Dr. Reinhardt decides he's fucked with them enough and reveals himself.
Yeah, he does the classic spin around in a chair. We introduced the movie villain. He does the evil.
Yes.
He spins around. So this is Maximilian Schell, who, again, Pete and I don't know a whole lot about. He just feels like he should have been some Bond villain. He's got crazy eyes. He's got an air of menace. He's got an accent.
Mad German scientist. He's got curly hair, big beard, just looks floofy, dresses vaguely like a Russian czar. Yeah, and every word he says is a pronouncement of some sort. He is declaring a thing with every line of dialogue. Maximilian Schell is going so fucking hard, and it's wonderful. By the way, Maximilian Schell, the pun on Maximilian Schell's name that eventually emerges, entirely accidental, I am told.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. So you have the lead actor, Maximilian Schell, playing the bad guy, and he's got a robot named Maximilian, which will get very confusing here if we start using the actor's name. So yeah. I will always call him Hans Reinhardt, but there's a pun later involving Maximilian Schell, which is ridiculous, but it happened.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're getting to that. We have to talk about that.
So Dr. Hans Reinhardt spins around in his little spinny chair, and he says, "Welcome to my ship. This is the Cygnus." And he calls off Maximilian, his robot. He's like, "Oh, come now, Maximilian. That's no way to greet our guests." And again, this is why this feels like a Bond movie. This is dialogue right out of a Bond movie.
Yeah. And Vincent and Maximilian immediately get into a robotic pissing contest.
Yes.
It is the weirdest dynamic. And at one point, both, and the funny thing is, neither of their sides is really down with this. Both the people who are supposed to have leashes on these robots are trying to call them off, but it's like two dogs that are really determined to go at it.
Yeah, this is like the worst day at the dog park.
Yeah. And at one point, Dr. Reinhardt makes some comment about David and Goliath, which is so mystifying to me because, yeah, he's clearly on Goliath's side here and is trying to be intimidating. Who hears the story of David and Goliath and comes away thinking, man, Goliath was badass. Goliath was the fucking man.
Here's my inferior robot. Fear him. Yeah, so this will be one of the best running jokes in the movie. The little hero R2-D2 Vincent and the huge hulking Maximilian Darth Vader looking robot. They will forever be in each other's grills. They hate each other.
Yeah.
It's like
just on sight.
Yeah, the sexual tension between those two. Like, just do each other and get it over with. Jesus.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So anyway, this is a fun subplot. It'll have a fun culmination later. But for now, we have this giant Maximilian just lording over poor Vincent and bullying him, and Vincent shakes. So yeah, for now, we just know fear Maximilian. He's the muscle on this ship.
Yeah, yeah. And Maximilian is a petty, dramatic bitch. I think this is the key to understanding that big red bastard. He just likes being an asshole because it is fun.
To be fair, when I saw him at 5, it did prepare me for middle school and high school. It prepared me for bullies. So like, hey, I'm going to meet some petty bitches when I'm in middle school. So I'm glad I saw the black hole to prepare me for that.
Yeah, well, hey, you got to learn about this somewhere. I mean...
Yeah, Bambi wasn't teaching me that. Neither was Pete's Dragon. All right, so let's talk about Dr. Reinhardt's story. The next 30 minutes of this movie, it's only a 90-minute movie. There's a lot of talking in this movie.
Yeah. Now we get Reinhardt's story of what happened to the crew. And according to Dr. Reinhardt, okay, he cops to Kate's dad being dead immediately. What's the bullshit story he gives about how he died?
What happened is his mission got recalled 20 years ago. He's like, I sent all my crew home. I don't know what happened to them. They just disappeared. Your father stayed here, but he somehow just died.
Yeah. He claims that he's like, oh, did the crew not make it home? Well, I sent them home. Huh, that sure seems weird. I wonder what could have happened to all those crew that were totally alive the last time I saw them.
Yeah, this movie's going to get really dark for a Disney movie.
Oh, man. And so this is something that I did not see until the most recent viewing and would not have seen had I not been watching this with a woman, which is that there is a serious, creepy uncle vibe coming out of Dr. Reinhardt being directed at Dr. Kate. And I'm like, and as soon as Olivia points this out, I'm like, holy shit, you're right. Yeah, and of course the person whose safety depends on picking up bullshit vibes like this, of course she's the one who spots it. But yeah, if you watch this again, look for it. There is some legit, unpleasant sexual tension coming out of Dr. Reinhardt being directed at Dr. Kate.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt that's true, but I would look at this from Hans Reinhardt's point of view. I haven't seen a woman in many years. It would be very advantageous if I had a woman up here with me.
Yeah, that doesn't make it better.
No, it doesn't. I'm just pointing out in the character, it would fit his character.
Yeah, and this is another thing where I'm wondering how much of this was in the script versus how much was the actors trying to do something with this utterly inert dialogue. Mm-hmm. Was this an on-set decision of Maximilian Schell going, yeah, shit, this dude hasn't seen a woman in 20 years. He's going to be creepy at her.
Yeah, luckily he's not creepy towards the other people. He's very warm. No, so there's a whole section of the movie, and I will paraphrase the next 20 minutes of dialogue. It's gravity, black hole, gravity, science, discovery, black hole. Like, it's just techno babble and techno jargon as they try to come up with a plot why he's still out here.
Though that doesn't capture the seductive quality those words have with Anthony Perkins. Yeah, he is very deftly sciencing his way into Anthony Perkins' pants.
Yes, he wants the woman, but the one he's really turning on is Anthony Perkins.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'll summarize this because I don't want to get bogged down in this part because there's more stuff later. But the plot of this movie is thus that Dr. Hans Reinhardt has figured out how to stop the gravity of a black hole. He has invented this anti-gravity machine. That's why his ship is allowed to sit right next to the black hole. And they're amazed. They're like, that's like the most impressive science discovery ever. He's like, well, thank you. And he's like, but there's more. He's like, I've also figured out how to go through a black hole. And they're like,
what?
What you talking about, Dr. Reinhardt? They don't buy this at first.
They're very much, yeah, dude's crazy. He has lost his mind. That is mad science. Have you seen where you are, guys? I mean, come on.
Yeah, so he's been up here for 20 years all by himself with his robot crew that he claims he built I built all these robots. I programmed them. It's just me and them. And he's clearly mad, but he's also a genius. And they're like, wow. So he's already invented this anti-gravity machine, which is impressive on its own. But yeah, now he starts making claims that I have discovered how you can go through the black hole. And if I go through that black hole, there's like other worlds and you become immortal. And they're like, I'm not sure science backs that one up, buddy.
Nope. Immortality. The numbers prove it.
But for now, they can't go anywhere. For now, they're not too creeped out. They're like, well, this ship is creepy, but no one's being hostile towards us. This guy is claiming we're his guests. So for now, they just buy it. But the one who really is interested in this is Anthony Perkins, the science guy, who wants to learn more about these equations that Dr. Reinhardt has come up with.
Yeah, the rest of the crew is like, so can we borrow some shit and repair the Palomino so we can just fuck off out of here and let you keep doing your mad science thing? Can we just, go?
Yeah. There's a great divide between the crew. Some enjoy Dr. Reinhardt. Some want to get out of here. Robert Forster wants nothing to do with them whatsoever. And this is, so they go to get their parts. And if I recall, this is where Maximilian starts threatening them again because they start walking to the parts room and Dr. Reinhardt says, please do not explore my ship without a guide. It's very unsafe. So let Maximilian guide you.
We're yada-yadaing some great Maximilian Vincent flirting, though. Yeah, when they are dispatched, Maximilian is assigned to lead them to the stores where they will, get whatever materials they need to repair their ship. And yeah, Maximilian and Vincent get up in each other's faces and turn upside down at each other. I have no idea what that was meant to prove. I feel like that was one of the kiddie moments that was supposed to make Maximilian less threatening. Like, oh, look, he's doing a silly thing, kids. Look at the silly robot flipping on his head.
Yeah, I was thinking about it as I was watching it today. So they're in the elevator, and Maximilian is looming over all the crew members just watching them. And Vincent says, oh, don't worry. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And Maximilian, in a moment of comic relief, just randomly rotates and flips upside down, which I think is him pointing out, look, I can fall, and it doesn't hurt me, which I think is what he's doing.
I'll buy it.
And then Vincent does the same thing, which is like two peacocks showing their plumage at each other.
Yeah.
Anyway, more robot sexual tension. We'll see this for quite a bit.
Yeah, and then we start getting into the one of the pieces of this movie that is actually legitimately engaging, which is, two different guys from the crew at different points. So I think Maximilian was taking Charlie and Robert Forster to stores, and then, as I recall, Dr. Reinhardt was giving his own tour to Anthony Perkins, Dr. Kate, and Ernest Borgnine. And then in both groups, somebody splits off and does some exploring. Robert Forster and Ernest Borgnine both split up and start having a look around. And now this is interesting and genuinely kind of creepy because now they are actually exploring the ghost ship and trying to figure out what is actually going on here.
Yeah, this is a fun part of the movie. So once we got all the all the techno babble out of the way, now that people can explore and they can see what the hell's going on. Where does Forster go? Does Forster go to the hospital? Is that the room he goes to?
I think he sees the hospital, then he finds the crew quarters.
Ah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is exploring the crew quarters and noticing that, seems like everybody left their clothing behind. That's odd. And then he finds robots giving a robot funeral.
That's right. Yeah, there's a robot funeral. So he notices these robots are behaving in very human ways, the robot crew on the ship, the Dementor-looking dudes. And also, if I recall, some of them have pictures of their family and loved ones on their dressers, which you wouldn't think a robot would need.
Well, no, I think those were not associated with the robots. That was clearly the crew quarters. I think the mystery there is, why did they leave pictures of their loved ones behind? Why did they not bring this with? And I think I actually spotted some posters on the wall in the crew quarters, which I love. That's such a humanizing touch.
Yeah, so Robert Forster discovers the crew room, he sees the robot funeral, and meanwhile Ernest Borgnine, who, as you would expect, would be incredibly stealthy. Big fat grandpa sneaking around the ship, evading all the robots. And he's the one that eventually goes into this one room where there's a a robot guard, and he starts talking to it. And he's like, "Are you alive? Can you talk?" And the robot says nothing. And then the robot turns around and starts walking away, and he starts limping. And Borgnine's like, "Why would a robot have a limp?"
Yeah, yeah. And that he also finds the hydroponics bay, which is just massive. Apparently that was one of the selling points of the Cygnus. One of the reasons it was so big was so that it could grow its own food for its crew and keep them out in space indefinitely. Which, one of the rare science things you hear in this movie and go, that's actually smart. Yeah. That doesn't sound like complete bullshit.
Yeah, there's a similar movie with Bruce Dern, Cool Runnings.
Yeah, Silent
Running, that's it. Yeah, Silent Runnings, where he's got a whole garden up in space, which is really cool.
Oh, and I should point out, we kind of glossed over this. We have met the Stormtrooper bots at this point. 4 red Stormtrooper bots were sent in a previous scene to fetch Charlie from the Palomino. That's how Charlie wound up chatting with Dr. Reinhardt and the rest of them. But we need to set up these fucking Stormtrooper bots, man.
Okay, well, we'll set them up, but there's one other robot we have to do. I kind of yada-yada'd over.
Oh, yeah. Maximilian kicks a pile of junk, and the pile of junk pops out some googly eyes.
Yeah, so there's one other robot in this movie. Again, it's a whole movie of robots. We have the cute little one, Vincent. We have the evil bad one, Maximilian. But there's another robot on the ship who's the same model as cute little Vincent. His name is Old Bob. He's voiced by Slim Pickens, and he is just as Pete said, basically a pile of junk with eyes. He is so old and feeble, but he will be kind of the comic relief and the sidekick to Vincent later in the movie.
Oh, feeble hell. They code him as an abuse victim. He cannot look at Maximilian without literally trembling. He's not just old. He has been beat to absolute shit. He is Maximilian's punching bag. He exists for Maximilian to fuck with.
I want to clarify that a little bit because there's a line in this movie that I cannot believe is in this movie where Vincent meets Old Bob. He goes, "Hey, old timer, how are you?" And Old Bob's like, "Well, I'm just the maintenance droid. I just help with the parts, but you better stay away from Maximilian. He is mean to me. He does things to me." Then he's like, "He's done things to me I don't even want to talk about." I'm like, is he the gimp? What is going on here?
Yeah, no. As this movie progresses, we will get robot bonding scenes between Vincent and Bob, because Vincent is they're clearly the same lineage of robots. Even without all the damage, it's clear that Bob is an older model of the same fundamental type as Vincent. And here's where Vincent creeps me the fuck out.
Uh-oh. I want to hear this. Tell me this.
Vincent and Bob are just such robot supremacists. There are so many lines about the superiority of their model of robot above all other robots, and how all these other robots are so clearly beneath them. They are the best. It just read so fucking white supremacist to me. I'm like, I am so skeeved out right now. And is this why you two hate? Is this why Vincent hates Maximilian so much? He's challenging Vincent's smug sense of superiority over all other robots.
So on top of all the other creepy subplots and themes in this movie, now we have eugenics.
Yes.
Right.
And the natural robot order. Some robots were just born to rule.
Wow, I never thought of that. This movie, I had so many little Vincent Maximilian jokes, and you're coming up with new ones I hadn't thought of.
Well, this movie has a lot of depth to it, and we're exploring it together.
Okay, so the crew is starting to put together all their notes. They're like, we saw a robot funeral. There's like crew member stuff still here. What is going on? And half of the crew is creeped out.
Oh, we are gliding over the stupidest, most pointless subplot that we have to mention, and then yada yada.
You're going to have to be more specific in the black hole.
The robot arcade. They send Vincent to hang out with Bob at the robot arcade while they all go have dinner. Like the disgusting biological creatures that they are. I think Vincent is secretly feeling that same sense of superiority over all the humans, but he just has the good sense to not actually say it out loud. But that's just me.
Okay, let me set you up for this one. So yeah, there's a scene where the crew of the Palomino is all invited to dinner, and they're going to meet Hans Reinhardt in the dining room, and no robots allowed in this dining room, so they send Vincent to the arcade. Very similar to how my parents, when we went to Vegas, they go in the casino and say, here, hang out in the arcade for 5 hours and we'll come pick you up. So Vincent has to go to the arcade, and this is, as a kid, I loved this scene, but it is rather pointless, where Vincent challenges the stormtrooper robots on the ship to a shooting contest.
He challenges the best stormtrooper robot, Star.
Yeah, you explain this one to people.
Oh, God. I don't know how hard to lead into this, because we are legitimately veering into some uncomfortable territory. He humiliates the black robot.
You had to say it like that.
That is how Captain Star stands out from all the other robots. This is where we see all the red stormtrooper robots hanging out, and there are so many of them. There is an army of red stormtrooper robots aboard this scientific exploration vessel. But yeah, the best of them, apparently the one that used to be in charge before Dr. Reinhardt built Maximilian, is the one that isn't red. He's the one who's black. And yeah, apparently Bob beat him once in a shooting contest, and he tantrumed so hard that he blew out his own circuits. And yeah, Vincent challenges him to a shooting contest, and that's exactly what happens. He's so humiliated, he tantrums himself to death.
Well, yeah, I should point out, I said this earlier, Dad, this is a scene that's, you think it's just a silly little scene, but it's kind of pivotal to the movie because Vincent is the one who starts shit.
Yeah. He even shoots him a little. I mean, at this point, Vincent's lasers have been repaired to where he can shoot sort of arcadey stun beams. The only thing that this is advancing the plot at all is, Vincent and Bob are bonding. And it is such a huge waste of time. We come back to this fucking robot arcade like on 3 different cuts.
Okay, let me clarify because I think we're being confusing for people. For people who don't know, there's a robot. It's like a shooting gallery where the stormtroopers hang out. It's like their break room. And they have like a video game. And they practice shooting targets. And there's this one guy named there, Star, who's in all black leather, not in red leather. He's the big star. So he shows off his shooting gallery talents, and when he sees Vincent come in, he's like, come over here, I'll show you how good I am. And Star goes against old Bob. Star cheats and knocks him out of the way, so Bob loses. And then Vincent is mad, and because Vincent and Bob are the superior robots, he must prove his worthiness. He goes up there, challenges the champion to the shooting contest, and not only does Vincent win, Vincent shoots and kills him.
I see why you read it that way. I think that Vincent is effectively unarmed at this point. I think that he is incapable of doing any real damage to anything. I think it's just embarrassing. I think he basically, hit him with a BB gun.
See, I was going to say the way I read it is that this scene is meant to show that Vincent and old Bob actually have some lethal weapons. Like, Vincent can do some damage if he wants to.
No, that comes... They actually get to that in another scene or two when Vincent and Bob have had enough fun humiliating the lesser robots. Vincent asks Bob, hey, can you repair my gun so I can, really shoot things? And it's while old Bob is repairing Vincent's guns that Bob really starts laying it on. You and your friends are in terrible danger. This is a ship of death.
Yeah, that's the next scene. Okay, let's get to that. Let's skip over all that exposition. Well, they're all at dinner, and they're all talking, all the crew members, with Dr. Reinhardt, and he's explaining his plan. I'm going to fly through the black hole. And they're like, no, you're not. Anyway, now we go back to the scene that's really going to set the third part of the movie in motion, where old Bob and Vincent are kind of pulled aside, the 2 robots, and old Bob finally says, I've been meaning to tell you, but I couldn't do that because there were people watching me. You and your friends are in grave danger. This is a death ship. Get out while you still can. So this is where this really does turn ominous, where Vincent's the first one to know, we're only here to die. We better get out of here.
Yeah. And while this is going on, Robert Forster and Charlie are actually able to repair the ship. They do actually get the parts they need, and Palomino is ready to fuck off.
Yeah, they are. Okay, so the good guys are ready to leave this ghost ship. They are ready to just go back home and report their findings. I think if I recall, Dr. Reinhardt even says, I just blast off a little bit and watch me go through the black hole so you can document it. You can be my journalist.
Yeah, that's the plan. They are going to observe this and go back to the world and tell everybody what a big-time genius this guy was. But meanwhile, Bob spills the beans about what's going on with the Dementor bots.
Okay, yeah, so this is the plot of the movie, why, again, this was probably way too creepy a movie for a little 5-year-old, for a Disney movie, to be honest. So the plot of this movie, again, is thus that Dr. Reinhardt has killed all the crew members and turned them into not quite robots. They're like half human, half robot, like kind of like Darth Vader.
Zombies.
Yeah, zombies.
They're techno-zombies.
Techno-zombies, yeah. So old Bob explains it, that all the crew members here are techno-zombies.
Yeah, the crew rebelled against Dr. Reinhardt when he refused the orders to return to Earth. Kate's father led them. Kate's father was killed outright. And then, yeah, using the legion of stormtrooper bots that were on board the ship, Dr. Reinhardt put down the rebellion, and he turned, all the survivors into techno-zombies. And they're running the ship for him.
Yeah, so these are kind of half alive, half dead, creepy little trapped in limbo humanoids running the ship. And it's really creepy when you start pulling off their masks and seeing their face underneath. It's really, again, I remember as a kid thinking that was incredibly creepy.
Oh, yeah. And that's what triggers the real shit. And at this point, everybody is back on board the Palomino except for Kate and Anthony Perkins.
Yeah, so they're all back on the Palomino. They're getting ready to go. It's just a nice, peaceful exit. But this is where Vincent uses his... If I recall, Vincent and old Bob have blasted a sentry robot at this point. They've actually caused some problems, and they hid the body. So Vincent starts telling Kate with his ESP, come back to the ship now. We're about to get... they're about to find out that we know the secret. They're going to come after us. Get hit back here now. And it's really going to escalate the third part of this movie.
Yeah, Dr. Alex, Anthony Perkins, has decided he's staying, and he is refusing Captain Robert Forrester's command to get his ass back to the Palomino, and for some reason, Dr. Kate is still there with him, and Robert Forrester makes the command decision to Vincent: use your ESP to tell Dr. Kate to get her ass back here and tell her why. And then she tells Anthony Perkins, when Dr. Reinhardt's out of earshot, hey, we're surrounded by fucking techno-zombies. This guy's a mass murderer. We gotta fuck off right now. And Anthony Perkins, he is a Dr. Science guy. He just has to see for himself. And yeah, he pulls off the reflective face mask of one of the Dementor robots, and yep, that's a person. That's actually the director. That's a cameo by director Gary Nelson as the one techno-zombie whose face we actually see. Ah,
okay, I didn't know that. Okay, and with that, and seeing the shit's about to hit the fan. The crew knows the secret of the ship, that all these people are dead, that Reinhardt's a murderer and a madman. They're trying to get out of there. Anthony Perkins and Dr. Kate are on the bridge of the ship. They're still kind of trapped with Dr. Reinhardt, and here comes the scene that made many little kids wet the bed.
Yep. Dr. Reinhardt, as I recall, he's not pleased by this, that they know his dark secret, but Maximilian loses his shit. This is where he eviscerates Anthony Perkins. Dr. Reinhardt has gifted Anthony Perkins with his enormous logbook of science. And we have this great moment of symbolism where Anthony Perkins tries to fend off the giant killer robot with the big book of science. And yeah, Maximilian tears right through that shit right before ripping out his chest cavity.
I think what we learned here is that scissors beats paper.
Yes! How long have you been waiting to drop that line?
I was so excited you were going in that direction because I was thinking there's a rock, paper, scissors joke to be made right here. But yeah, this is a very iconic Disney scene that has no business being in a Disney movie, where Maximilian extends it's like literally like a propeller, like an airplane propeller in front of him. He's got two of them. He comes at Anthony Perkins, going to kill him for exposing their secret. Anthony Perkins holds up this book. And again, it's not as graphic as you think it is because you don't see any blood, but you definitely see the propeller going through the book and into Anthony Perkins' chest cavity. And then, like Pete said earlier, he makes the most horrifying noise as he is eviscerated.
And then chucked into an electricity pit. Oh, so very dead. And Dr. Reinhardt is not happy. He liked Anthony Perkins.
Yeah, he tells Maximilian, "You shouldn't have done that. He was a good man. How dare you?"
Oh man, there's a moment in there that I have read was Maximilian Schell improvising, which is why it's so good and why it's so completely not followed up on. Save me from Maximilian. He actually whispers that to Dr. Kate. Save me from Maximilian. Like Maximilian has secretly taken over the ship and is running this entire thing, and he has just lost control that utterly. It's an ad-lib. They don't bring this back. It doesn't tie in with anything. But what a great idea.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because they never bring that up later in the movie. It's meant to imply that Maximilian controls the ship and Dr. Reinhardt is an innocent man. But That's not the plot of the rest of the movie.
Nope. But yes, that now Dr. Kate becomes the kidnapped princess. He captures Dr. Kate. Why? Okay, creepy uncle. That is the only reason for him to be doing this. But even then, he's about to leave the ship. He's about to go into the black hole.
Well, he expects to survive the black hole, so if he's got a wife on board, I don't want to get too far into it for a Disney movie, but it'd be very exciting that he has some kind of sex companion.
Dr. Kate, she has ESP with Vincent, so she's like, yep, I'm being captured right now. And yeah, they don't dick around with this. Vincent immediately says they're taking her. And if you watch this again, watch how immediately Robert Forster just snaps into action. He is so cautious. He is so the voice of reason throughout this. Let's not go there. Let's be careful with this. As soon as Dr. Kate is threatened, he is out the door. He is on it. He is going to rescue her. God damn it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he is a bail bondsman, so that's what he does. But yeah, no, that's true. So this is the entire third part of the movie where Anthony Perkins has been killed viciously, once again, I must add, way too viciously for this movie. And then Dr. Kate is captured, Robert Forster and crew spring into action, and I think this is where Hans Reinhardt says to Maximilian, "The time has come to liquidate our guests."
Yes.
And really, it's all action the rest of the movie. Like I don't have a whole lot of notes for the rest because there's no more plot. The rest of the movie is just an action movie.
It is such a strange action movie, though, because thus far the movie has really been leaning into the creepy haunted house in space. Now we really start leaning into the Star Wars ripoff. Now Stormtrooper's gonna Stormtroop now. So now, Robert Forster takes the two nice robots with him. Vincent because he's extremely useful, and Bob because he can figure out how to get them to the, zombie lobotomy facility where Kate is being taken. And from here on out, we get lots and lots of action sequences, lots of Star Wars style shootouts with the Stormtrooper equivalents. And it kind of merits a lot of yada-yadaing, though, he does burst into the lobotomy facility and save Dr. Kate at the last minute from getting her brain scrambled by the, zombie-making laser. Yeah, that probably warrants some description on its own. We have skipped over that. We have seen this before. Like, apparently for maintenance, the Dementor robots, which are actually the zombies of the crew, we have seen them get passed under this laser that kind of zaps them in the head, which is being presented as sort of, oh, that must be a maintenance thing. Like, nope. Apparently they need fresh lobotomies every now and then.
Yeah, let me clarify that for people. So I said earlier that Dr. Reinhardt may have wanted a sex slave on his ship. I completely take that back now because they tried to turn her into a zombie.
Yeah.
Okay, I take that back. So if you've never seen this movie, there's a room where robots are placed down in it's almost like a casket. They lay down in a little thing, they rotate around in a circle, and then when they get to the laser blasts their brains out basically and turns them into a zombie. So they try to do that to Kate. And this is, again, as a kid, I thought this scene was really creepy. This one scared me a little bit, this scene.
Again, you as an adult, you ask the question, why would he want to do that? And yeah, all the answers are awful. All the answers are truly awful. And in a Disney movie. In a Disney fucking movie.
How dare you imply that the madman had bad intentions for people?
Disney movie that hints at a kind of techno-zombie necrophilia thing that Dr. Reinhardt wants to explore. Oh, God.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark themes. Again, later after this movie, just to put this in historical context, Disney wanted to do more PG adult movies, so they came up with their own production company. Is that Touchstone, if I recall?
Yeah, I believe so.
So then they could do more adult movies and not have them have a Disney name on them. But this movie straight up says Disney all over it, and yeah, it's got some really dark stuff going in there.
Yeah. And so while all these shenanigans are going on, Dr. Reinhardt is making his preparations to take the Cygnus into the black hole. And this is what starts another ticking clock for our heroes. I mean, we've got that line from Ernest Borgnine, my God, he's actually going to do it. While he and Charlie are back on board the Palomino waiting for the rescue mission to get back. So he's getting real jittery. He would like to get the fuck out of here now.
Yeah, so we got dual subplots going here of action. We got the rescue of Kate. This is Forster, Vincent, and Old Bob rescuing Kate. Just endless action scenes, blasters, red stormtroopers who cannot hit anything. They are the worst shots I have ever seen.
And as they get close to the Palomino, Ernest Borgnine and Charlie come out to, try and rescue them, get them the rest of the way towards the ship. Ernest Borgnine gets shot in the leg, except, whoops, no, he didn't. It turns out he fakes an injury so he can get back on board the Palomino and fly out of there and leave everybody behind. There's just one teensy tiny problem with this plan.
He can't fly.
He doesn't know how to fly the ship. He's a newspaper reporter. He does not know how to fly the ship. Oh, yeah, and Hans was going to blow up the ship anyway because fuck those guys.
Okay, yeah, so let's put this into context for people. So as these missions are going on, we have the one cowardly crew member, Ernest Borgnine, who decides to flee on his own. He leaves all his friends behind. He tries to fly away, which I had forgotten this subplot as a kid. I remember Anthony Perkins dying. I had no recollection of Ernest Borgnine dying too, but he does.
Yep, second fatality.
Yeah, so our two big co-stars both die in this movie. So yeah, Borgnine tries to flee as a coward in the Palomino. He gets shot out of the sky. He crashes. When he tries to fly away, he crashes into the Cygnus, causes a lot of damage. And so basically the entire last 10, 15 minutes of the movie is the crew of the Palomino, now they have nowhere to go. Now they're stuck on a dying ship that's about to be thrown into a black hole.
That God is throwing rocks at. This entire plot is so coincidence-driven. The ship has been out there for 20 years. They get there just as the mad scientist is about to complete his mad plan and go into the black hole. But just as the guy is going into the black hole, a meteorite storm kicks up, and God starts throwing rocks at the ship. And meanwhile, what the plot has transitioned into is that the Cygnus has this independent probe ship, and the Palomino survivors are like, fuck it, let's go to the probe ship and try and get our way back to Earth on that fucking thing. Where is it? All the way across the ship. So now they have to go the length of this enormous Star Destroyer ship while God is throwing rocks at it. And this is where the disaster movie part of this thing kicks in.
Yeah, this is very special effects heavy, the end of the movie. You got all these red meteors being thrown at the ship, crashing into it.
Oh, and by the way, the black hole's red now.
Oh, it's red? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it makes the transition to red once God starts throwing rocks. It was blue before, but now it's red.
So at no point in this movie is the black hole black.
No.
So I'll try to paint a picture for people who can understand what we're talking about. So this Cygnus ship is damaged. Hans Reinhardt is trying to fly it into the black hole anyway. There's this probe ship that's almost like in a little escape pod that Reinhardt used earlier in the movie to test out the black hole. The crew of the Palomino is trying to run for it, trying to escape in that.
And we've got a bunch of set pieces that we really don't need to describe in detail. This is the Poseidon Adventure in Space bullshit. They have several set-piece scenes of escaping danger, including the big-ass meteorite rolling down the big corridor that we were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah, let's explain that one, because that one is significant because it's so iconic. Kind of paint a picture for people who may have never seen that scene before.
Like, imagine a gigantic chasm combined with a greenhouse. And there's this narrow bridge going across it, very last bridge out of Casa Doom style thing. And you got to get across that thing, and at the far end of it, this big-ass meteorite strikes the ship in just the perfect way so that sumbitch is now rolling down the giant corridor, coming directly at the bridge. And all the poor bastards on that bridge are silhouetted against it as they are scrambling to get across. And of course they do at the last minute, just before the meteorite wipes it out.
Yeah, this is a very Raiders of the Lost Ark image of this boulder, but it's orange. It's bright orange, and it's this cool meteor rolling towards them as they try to cross a bridge. And again, that is a legitimate cool Disney scene. I wish this movie was better known for that moment alone. It's a really cool shot.
Yeah, no, there's a reason they were selling that as hard as they were. In a better movie, yeah, that probably would have been an iconic moment.
Yeah, that should be like a part of Space Mountain or something. I mean, it really should. I'm very high on that scene in particular. Okay, let's finish this up. So, as they're all escaping the ship, the crew is trying to get off in this probe ship and fly away. Our villain, our mad scientist, Dr. Hans Reinhardt, is trying to fly into the black hole, but he can't because his ship has been damaged by the meteors and the gravity's taking him. And in all the chaos, a big computer falls on him and kills him.
Yes. We could have, are we going to do some sort of thing where the heroes outwit the mad scientist? Is the mad scientist going to be brought down by his own hubris? No. God's going to throw rocks at his ship, and then a giant computer monitor is going to fall on him. The end. There is an element of it coming back to bite him, in that he is begging for somebody to help him, but the only ones there are the zombie crew, and they just keep doing their things. And the thing is, they can apparently operate the ship, so presumably they can take orders. So if they're not helping him, they've got just enough humanity that they're like going, fuck you.
I forgot to make a medic robot.
But yeah, this is also when he orders Maximilian to prepare the probe ship for final launch. And just as Maximilian is leaving is when he gets crushed by the giant computer monitor. And Maximilian's like, yeah, sucks to be you, buddy. Because he is a big petty bitch.
He is a big petty bitch. Yeah, Maximilian is it's hinted at earlier that Maximilian kind of runs the ship, not Hans Reinhardt. But yeah, this is where we really see it, that Reinhardt dies and Maximilian couldn't care less. So whatever. Yeah. But I have to say how anticlimactic is that our villain just dies from a falling computer. That's like in a James Bond movie where James Bond is storming the bad guy's headquarters and the bad guy falls and hits his head and dies.
Yeah.
Like, come on, give us a showdown or something.
Yeah, at this point, our main villain and our heroes are technically no longer even in conflict with each other. They don't care.
Yeah, perhaps not the most tightly written screenplay ever, I will say.
Yeah, and I gotta say, based on how much trouble our heroes have getting to that fucking probe ship, I don't know what Dr. Reinhardt's plan was, but he was not getting to that probe ship. That ship sailed. Okay, I mean, the bridge he needed to get there, that thing got wiped out by a fucking giant meteorite. I don't know what his alternate route was.
Okay, so we're almost at the end of the movie. The crew of the Palomino, the ones that are left, everyone minus Borgnine and Perkins, are all in the probe ship, but they still have the boss villain they have to fight.
Yes, and this is one of the things that is actually set up well by the script. We're gliding over this because between Dr. Reinhardt dying and them finally getting to the probe ship, there's all the, set piece nonsense. But yeah, he dispatched Maximilian to that ship, and guess who's there waiting for him?
I love the way this scene is blocked and set up and shot. This is, again, one of the triumphs of this movie. The final scene, the good guys just have to get through this one doorway to get to the probe ship, and as they open it, there's Maximilian, the devil death robot. So
yeah, who promptly dispatches old Bob. He's done playing with Bob. Fuck you, you die now.
Yeah, Maximilian shoots old Bob, so old Bob goes down, our comic relief old robot.
Oh, and that's a great point. This demonstrates that Maximilian has the ability to shoot lasers. He would just prefer to eviscerate you. He is a big, petty bag of bitch.
If you strangle someone, it's more personal. That's all serial killers know this. It's more meaningful. That's Maximilian. He's a serial killer robot.
Yeah, so when he shoots Bob, that is legitimately him being done with fucking Bob.
So here comes the final showdown where the good guys and Vincent have to take on this huge robot Maximilian. And again, we've seen all this pettiness and sexual tension and little, dick-waving contest between Vincent and Maximilian. And this is where they finally square off. And I actually have to say, as a kid, this scene pissed me off because I liked Maximilian more than Vincent.
I want to jump back to something you said, though. You said that this is where the main characters and Vincent square off against Maximilian. Mm-hmm. No, this is where Vincent squares off against Maximilian. The 3 surviving humans just get the fuck out of there. Like, well, Vincent's got this. Get on that ship right now. And you know what? I don't blame them.
I was going to say, if I recall, Maximilian shoots the gun out of Charlie's hand right at the start. That's why.
Yeah, and we have seen that these blasters are incapable of damaging Maximilian. This ship is not stocking lasers that are capable of damaging its chief enforcer, which is really good planning when you think about it. Or really bad planning, depending on how you want to think about it.
Okay, so Vincent grabs Maximilian and kind of pushes him off to the side so the crew can run by. So the crew all gets to the probe ship safely, and now it's just the 2 robots. And let me start this. Again, we're in BattleBots action here, where Maximilian pulls out his little spinny blades, his little eviscerators, but Vincent is so small he can get between them, and he just pushes Maximilian back. So Maximilian bonks him, sends him flying, and then, if I recall, they end up electrocuting each other or something like that.
Maximilian electrocutes Vincent. We get another one of those stupid, his head starts lifting, his cap starts raising. For whatever reason. Well, Maximilian electrocutes the shit out of him. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, why is there this ridiculous sight gag in what is the climactic battle of your action movie? What the actual fuck?
And I have to say, okay, so Vincent, the little robot, David, is going to beat Goliath here, which is, again, as a kid, pissed me off because I love Maximilian so much more. But it is fitting. I have to say I appreciate the dramatic irony and the storytelling here, how he kills Maximilian, because we saw this earlier in the movie.
Yes. He penetrates Maximilian. Vincent deploys his little diamond head drill out of his body that he can use to do ship maintenance and stuff, and just gets in close and drills the big fucker. And it doesn't kill him, but it is enough to... and Maximilian makes this hideous shrieking noise.
Yeah.
I think Anthony Perkins' death scream might only be the second most disquieting death scream in this movie, because Maximilian makes a noise as he realizes that Vincent has just killed him. And yeah, it disables his ability to control his floating, and we see him floating towards the black hole.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I love about this, that Maximilian dies the exact same way he killed Anthony Perkins. He gets eviscerated through the heart with a drill, which
yeah.
Kudos to the screenwriter for coming up with that Vincent drills him, and then Maximilian screams, which, again, as I was watching, I was noticing that too, like, man, that's horrifying, hearing a robot scream as he's being drilled.
Yeah, and this is the sort of thing that actually works in the movie. Aside from some of the stupid sight gags that they put into that fight, the final confrontation between Vincent and Maximilian largely works. Mm-hmm. And it is actually a pretty satisfying scene. And then we see Vincent doubling back to comfort old Bob as he dies and reassure each other that, yes, their type of robot is superior to all other robots. Carry on the line, Vincent. Truly, we are the best.
I never thought about the superiority, the smugness, but you were right. That is literally his final words. No more for me, says old Bob. I'll leave you. And Vincent's like, well, remember, we are superior. And then he leaves.
Goddamn right we were. Goddamn right.
But again, I just cannot I keep saying this, that I have such strong memories of this movie as a kid, being so angry as a kid when Maximilian dies from this little pipsqueak Vincent beating him. Like, how the hell does he lose to Vincent? There's no way.
But see, this is what I was talking about. Vincent doing all the fucking heavy lifting in the back half of this movie.
Vincent turns into Shred It Bro and starts knocking out all the favorites. Okay, we have some very existential weird scenes to finish off here. This is basically the end of the movie. But
one last thing, I don't. You might decide this isn't interesting enough to keep, but I do want to point this out. At some point, the movie has just said, "Fuck it," to any sense of to any nod towards hard SF. They are in hard vacuum. They have been in hard vacuum for a while now. Nobody gives a shit. I read somewhere online that the original plan was that they were all supposed to be in spacesuits for these final scenes, getting through the wreckage and trying to get on board the probe ship and stuff. And the actors who were there all rebelled and said no. That is not the kind of movie we are making. We are not going to subject ourselves to that much extra effort.
Yeah, to put it in layman's terms, there's all sorts of holes that have been punched in the ship. The ship is exposed to space, and it's not affecting anybody in the movie.
Yeah, at this point, they are outside. They are outside of the ship, climbing into the wreckage of the probe ship, hoping the goddamn thing still works. And so they get into the probe ship, all the survivors. Now we've had 3 fatalities. Bob is a main character in this. He's a friendly character, and he dead as hell. We have had 3 fatalities out of 7 good guys in a Disney movie. But they get into the ship, and huzzah, the ship actually works, and they launch, and they can't control it. Because, once again, a good piece of writing, this has been established. Maximilian just programmed that fucker to go into the black hole. So guess where they're going? And that is when we get that wonderful moment where they realize, oh God, we're diving into a black hole. And Robert Forster and Yvette Mimieux just grab each other's hands. And it is such a, no bullshit, such a sweet little moment. Like, and you get the feeling that, okay, they haven't acted on this because they are on a spaceship together. Robert Forster is in charge. It would be totally inappropriate for them to start hooking up, but you can see that once they were back home, they were gonna see each other, and it's all gone now, and all they can do is just hold each other's hands. Legitimately touching moment.
That's true. That's a good point. Okay, I just want to talk about this last scene. There's only really one scene left in the movie. I will say before you say anything, I saw this movie dozens of times as a kid. We always rented it from the video store. It was always on TV. I'd watch it all the time. I have no memory of the last 10 minutes of this movie. As a kid, it's so weird and so bizarre and so existential. I must have just zoned out because I just remember Vincent killing Maximilian, and that's the end of the movie. I have no memory of this.
What do you have to grab onto as a child in what we're about to describe? I mean, what do you cling to as a child of, oh, that happened? And the novelization is even worse. The novelization is even weirder, if you can believe this. The 4 of them all get mushed into a kind of composite consciousness that emerges into heaven or some weird thing. But, like, okay, so you have the entire movie has been building up to this. They keep talking, we're going to go into the black hole, going to go into the black hole. Well, you kind of have to send them into the black hole. Well, what's going to happen when they go into the black hole?
That depends on which version you read.
Well, what happens is that none of the scriptwriters had the first fucking clue what's going to happen. So now, at the last minute, for the last 5 minutes of this movie, we are now going to become 2001: A Space Odyssey. We are going to fling weird psychedelic bullshit onto the screen and see what sticks.
Yeah, for people who have never seen this, it's like an LSD trip. The last part of the movie, the last couple minutes of the movie, it's just everything's in slow motion. You get distorted visuals. Their faces distort. It's like they show the movie with frames cut out, so it kind of jumps and skips, and it's kind of awkward, almost like stop motion.
You hear the voices in their heads saying things that you can only kind of barely hear. You hear the voice of old Bob saying, "We are the best." I'm not making that up. I am not making that up.
The way I best describe this is it's like the Willy Wonka boat ride.
And by the way, we have skimped on describing how menacingly beautiful the visuals are. But the black hole in the background of all this bullshit going on right up until the psychedelic point, legit menacing, legit scary. But once the psychedelic bullshit kicks in, we are treated to this visual of Dr. Reinhardt floating in space into the black hole, and Maximilian coming up behind him, and then meeting, colliding with one another, and then we cut to a close-up of Maximilian's helmet, and we can see eyes behind it this time, and it's Dr. Reinhardt. He is inside Maximilian. Maximilian has trapped him. That's right! He is inside the Maximilian shell. Maximilian shell in the Maximilian shell.
Yeah, very good. I was waiting for you to set that up and get to that. The Maximilian shell. That's such an odd visual. It has nothing to do with this movie. Like, it looks like, if people who have never seen this before, it looks like Dr. Reinhardt and Maximilian almost like slow dance. They embrace. Like, what the hell is going on?
And then we pad out to see that the composite Reinhardt Maximilian creature is on this big pillar looking out over hell. We promised you we were taking you to hell. Here we are now. We're there now. Dr. Reinhardt and Maximilian are in hell. And oh, look at all those poor techno-zombies shuffling about down below.
Yeah, Maximilian is literally standing guard over a river of fire in hell. Which makes no sense in this movie. That there's no, I mean, we had Dante's Inferno. They mentioned the devil earlier, but it doesn't match the story.
Nope.
No, it's just a visual. Like, where is this Disney movie going? Like, shouldn't like George Burns be playing the devil or something? No, it's like a robot devil over a lake of tortured soul. Where are we? And then I should point out there's another scene, and this scene I read was cut out in a lot of the UK. They thought this one was too offensive. Now we go from hell and we go to heaven.
Yes, an angel guides the probe ship and the Palomino survivors through all these, glowing arches as they ascend and emerge. And what do they emerge into? I don't fucking know. That might be a planet off in the distance. That might be heaven. That's just where the movie ends. That's just where it stops.
Yeah, they literally go through the black hole. They get all this weird imagery. It's an LSD trip, the Willy Wonka boat ride. They emerge. There's like a planet or a star in front of them, and they're like, oh, I guess we'll head for that. And that's the end of the movie.
Yep.
And wait, you got to kind of explain what just happened. But no, they don't.
No. They don't know how to end it any more than we do. A robot drilled another robot. I mean, there's your ending. Everything else after that is just fluff.
There's a line they use on Mystery Science Theater. I remember it's in Werewolf where Crow says, at this point you can hear the screenwriter just get up and walk out of the room.
Yep.
That's literally how this movie ends. They have no idea how they end it, so they just make it vague.
Yeah.
Although I remember I had the Disney read-along book for people who are too young. They used to, with every Disney movie, or even kids movie in general, there would usually be a book and a record player that would go with it you could buy, and it would read along.
How does the read-along end this? I want to hear how the read-along ends this shit.
This will not surprise you to know that the read-along Disney version is they escape the black hole and they go home to Earth safely and everyone's happy. Which is not the ending that we see in the movie, but that's how they market it to kids.
Yeah, no, but this kind of goes back to what I was saying about how it's shaped like a movie. It's like it has this shape of this profound ending that will leave you wondering and discussing what's going on. But no, it's just fucking stupid and random.
They decide they're Stanley Kubrick for the last 5 minutes, even though they're not.
Yeah, because, what 7-year-old didn't want to dress up and play Stanley Kubrick? I mean...
But I just cannot get over how I have no memory of that. I watched this movie for the first time in like 20 years a while back. And I have no memory of this ending.
I just remember being confused. I remember being more confused when I read the novelization. I figured the novelization would tell me what was up, and it did not. It emphatically did not.
So we have absolutely no idea at the end of this movie what happened to anybody.
The black hole.
Yes. So anyway, to sum up this movie, so again, this was Disney's foray into PG movies. Big notorious flop, although I looked at the numbers and it's not that big of a flop. It's just that a Disney movie did flop. I think that was the problem.
I feel like, who is the audience for this movie? I mean, there's too much kiddie schlock for it to be satisfying to the parents. There's all this horrific and confusing imagery for the kids. I mean, we still loved it.
Well, yeah, again, this was my favorite movie, and I knew a lot of kids in 1979 and 80, this would have been their favorite movie too. So it did appeal to kids. It's just a little maybe inappropriate for kids, but I do think kids did buy into it.
Yeah, but I don't know what parents are coming out of that movie. You ask your friends, oh, Jimmy wants to see this movie. Should I take Jimmy? Like, depends. Do you want to see Anthony Perkins get torn in half by a killer robot? What? No, you're joking. No, I'm not. I am not joking. Not even a little.
Yeah, that's a Disney movie, right?
Yeah. That's what a PG will get you, man, in 1979.
Yeah, and there's a whole bigger discussion. I don't want to get into it in this podcast, but what a PG movie used to be. And this, I think, would really shock people who didn't grow up in this era. Now, you and I know this, but like, Jaws is a PG movie. Poltergeist is a PG movie. Gremlins is PG. Like, those movies can fuck up kids really bad, but they're PG. PG just meant not G, but PG was awfully close to what we think of as R sometimes.
Well, PG-13 happened for a reason. I mean, the PG covered so much ground. And your resources, if you were a parent who cared about this shit, your resources were so limited. You couldn't go online and, look up what was going on in this movie. It's pure word of mouth. It's pure, reading the review in the newspaper and making your best guess about whether or not this is going to be appropriate for your kid. So if you're a parent, you see G, that's a definite yes, that'll be fine. You see an R, definite no, not okay. PG, you have no goddamn idea. Walk in and find out.
It was the Wild West. A G is Disney cartoons, R is horror movie or boobs or sex, and then everything in the middle is the Wild West.
Yep.
And you know what? We loved it. As kids, it was amazing. We got so many adult themes in our movies.
Especially when HBO became a thing. So many boobies.
Yeah, this is a 2-hour podcast, so I don't want to go too far, but I just want to say I'm so excited because most of my guests on Staff Picks are significantly younger than me. So I have to kind of, I wouldn't say dumb down, but I have to modify my speech to like more modern movie mindsets. But like someone like you who's my age, literally, man, we could talk about the 70s and 80s and movie culture. Man, I have to have you on for another movie because we're so similar.
Gladly. Oh, yeah, and we can talk about the 70s from the perspective of small children.
Yes.
Which, when you hear talking about the 70s, that's not the imagery that comes to mind, but that is our experience with the era. So neither of us were snorting coke off of a hooker's ass in CBGBs.
Yeah, no, I was 7. I was a little kid, very structured, my parents are very strict, and my whole life was trying to figure out how to watch boob movies on HBO. This is my entire life when I'm 7. And that's not uncommon. That's like every kid I know that was that age.
Yeah, kids today do not appreciate how much effort it was if you wanted to see boobies. Now the boobies are plentiful, which is probably for the best, but still.
We blazed that trail for you guys. We are the Jackie Robinsons here. We were first. Anyway, anything else you want to say about the black hole before we sign off?
I guess my closing thoughts on the black hole is that, yeah, it is such a strange piece of pop culture history, because not only is it this weird and disjointed artifact, it has all these pieces that work well in isolation, just not together. And then it had the full backing of a major studio. I feel like, a lot of forgotten movies are forgotten because they were marketed like shit. The studio didn't know what to do with them, didn't know how to sell them. Disney went hard on Black Hole, and which, was probably actually to its detriment. It's it's an absolute clusterfuck of a movie, but it's so strange that it is so utterly forgotten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get the sense that Disney's embarrassed by it, which
not an unreasonable reaction, if we're being honest.
No, I agree. But it was still so iconic for its time, and that's the thing that always baffles me, how a movie could be that big a deal, and then 20 years later, no one's ever heard of it.
Yeah. And I feel like I would say to anyone listening to this who's intrigued, watch it. You will be bored in a few parts. It's not all, over the top madness, but you will find isolated pieces that make you go, that is really cool.
Yeah, and if you don't think about the science too much, the story is actually very scientifically interesting.
Or just tell yourself that all the science they're making, it makes perfect sense. You just don't understand it.
Yes.
But this all makes perfect sense to somebody who really understands it. It's fine. It's fine.
Smart people wrote the script. Just keep repeating that.
Put yourself in their hands. You can trust them. It's all good. It's all well.
Okay, once again, I just want to thank you again. This was Pete's first time on Staff Picks. Again, first time he and I actually speaking in 30 years of email exchange.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I'm really glad we did this. We've been talking about doing this for a while now.
Yeah, this was one of my first 10 movies I wanted to do on Staff Picks. When I first came up with this podcast 5 years ago, I'm like, The Black Hole. That's absolutely one I want to talk about. But I kind of needed somebody who was as passionate about it and kind of grew up. You have to grow up with this movie to really be able to talk about it.
I think so, yeah. To really understand how big a footprint this had during that brief moment when Disney was really pushing it. There was a brief moment where this fucker was big.
Yeah, this might be the first movie I ever saw in a theater. I always forget if I saw Pete's Dragon in the theater or Fantasia. It would have been one of those three or The Fox and the Hound, but I know I saw this in the theater. So I know this was a huge
rad.
Yeah, this was a huge part of my childhood, your first movie you see, and this was a big one.
Yeah, for me, I can't remember which one it was. I think one of them was released a full year before the other, so IMDb can tell me, but it was either the Muppet movie or Superman the movie.
Ooh, those are good choices.
One of those. Yeah, no. Or the Orpheum Theater in Sioux City, Iowa.
And what was third, like Porky's? Okay, well, I'll let you sign off. I know it's been a 2-hour podcast. And again, I just want to thank everyone for listening. Again, my name is Mario Lanza. This is Staff Picks. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at staffpickspodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter @MarioJLanza. And until next time, I'll be out there searching for more movies that deserve more love, and I'll try to find somebody interesting to come on and talk about them. Until next time, talk to you later. Bye.
It's no use, Vincent. My useful days are finished. But part of me goes with you. You'll never be obsolete. Carry on the tradition. We're the best.